Hello, we're here today again. It's our regular Tuesday talk discussion on body electronics and with body electronics veteran Jeffory Schofield and myself, Illia Hart, and we will be joined by Guy Armstrong out of New Zealand. It's a different time zone for him, so he'll be coming in a little bit later. So, today we were discussing before I pressed record about getting body electronics out to more and more people. I think because it's such a shrouded thing. Don't you think, Jeffory? It's like that's been my experience with it. It's like no matter how many years go by and how many people are involved, it seems that it has this air of mystery to it, and it seems to be a bit shrouded. And what I really feel is important right now. It's always been important, but I feel it's very important right now. Is to really let body electronics out into the into greater populations and get a lot more people doing the work. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, the the greatest teacher is experience, and yeah, anything you and I can say uh, is a principle, and in order to be, like John used to say, be obedient to any type of principle that requires some discipline, you first have to have the knowledge. So
Right.
I feel what we are doing is sharing the knowledge. And the way John used to teach was he would talk a little bit from his heart and his writings or whatever he felt, and then we would hold points on each other. And then uh, when you're holding points and those principles of uh, thought, word, and emotion start to come out of your own being, and you realize how physical it is and how the heat builds up when you say those word patterns more, it starts to sink in that maybe these principles are correct.
Mm.
And the only way I can prove or disprove it is to apply them. And we're so used to being sold something, and there's so many scammers. It's like, how do you touch on the core essence of a person in a way that will inspire them to apply the principles? And the principles we're talking about is love, light, and perfection. And so when we're having our points held, and we we're nutritionally prepared, then the points will get very hot, and we'll start to just speak these word patterns, whatever are the feelings, and the facilitator is there not to guide or lead in how you're supposed to, what words you should say, or there's no expectation as far as what it should be, but you just let that intuition of, and sometimes it's such a simple word pattern. That's when you first get started. I remember one of the common responses as a facilitator people would give is like, you'd be holding their points and they're got some good heat, and sometimes they go to sleep. They're so whatever. It's not right or wrong. You just let them, because the energy is flowing. But you'll ask them very simple questions like, "What's happening? What are you feeling?" And if they say something, it's like a word pattern. Well, a common one was, "What's happening?" And they say nothing. And so one of the I would just, okay, say that word. Just go with what that they spoke, and nothing. I remember a good friend of mine. She used to say, "Nothing can kill me." She's an immortalist, And then I tapped into materialism and the underlying mechanisms of materialism. So this one word, no thing, nothing. If you look at materialism, is about things, and people acquire things. And so the simplicity of what this maybe is, what it represents, is a very significant thing, but we're unconscious to it. So you
That
don't belittle any word that comes out, even because it's not, oh, I remember blah blah blah, or
right, not to have a story.
doesn't have to be just the honest response. Sometimes that's the word pattern that will tie into other layers of suppressed memory that becomes rather apparent when you actually remember physical events that you have forgotten.
Right.
And so it's a continuous, the regeneration versus balance, I think was the topic you were talking about there in John's book. And it's we all seek that balance to where we don't have pain. I mean, as a chiropractor or any kind of a healer, you're trying to keep people, get them balanced without pain. But one thing that becomes quickly apparent with the healing crisis in body electronics, which is like real regeneration versus just balancing, is that there's pain involved. And so pain is our teacher, has been my teacher as a chiropractor before I even learned about body electronics. Well, actually about the same time, but pain is the capstone of memory. So everybody's suppressing their pain. And it's so fast, and we've done it for so long, and we've been taught it's okay. And there's many forms of suppression, and you guys know the long list of stimulants or whatever. But when you just realize that pain, if you didn't have that reflex mechanism of pain, it's there for a purpose, and it is considered an emotion, and love is more powerful than anything, including pain. So when you learn how to transmute, that's when you bring the pain and your own love from your heart, whatever the feeling is that's coming up, and whether you're having your points held or you're just going through a healing crisis on your own, which seems to be what I do a lot of my time, because I haven't had anybody hold point. So that's why, I'm always trying to find ways to initiate some type of memory retrieval or a healing crisis with what I have available. But the principles are still the same. It's love, light, and perfection. Do you want to say something on that, Illia? As far as
Well, the first thing I want to jump in on there is that no thing, the nothing and the everything duality. And the further word pattern from that would be I feel nothing. I've heard that a lot over the years from people on the table. So I feel nothing. Okay, so then where we would go from there is, okay, really feel what nothing feels like. Really feel that nothingness, and go into and expand and make that bigger, make that nothingness bigger. That what's coming in for us to become aware of and release is, like you say, it comes very naturally. It has to come very authentically. So when it's nothing, I feel nothing. Well, eventually, as we move our energy upscale, our emotional energy upscale, we will come to the realization of the duality of that, which is I feel everything. And so there's quite a, that's the dualistic format of that nothingness, is the everything. And that I've experienced that on the table several times in a way of I know nothing. And that word pattern has come. I know nothing. And then, and then you really feel what it feels like to know nothing, to really know nothing. And there's a really beautiful, when we remove any resistance and attachments that we have, uh, through what you described, the laws of love, the laws of light, and the laws of perfection, within the construct of body electronics, that anything that's of resistance to that falls away as we embrace it and as we re-experience it. So I think that's really important for people to realize, especially early on in body electronics, is that the whatever comes, we make that more, we make that bigger. We're not avoiding anything. We're wanting to truly embrace what comes up. And then, but always that nothing or that nothingness comes with that, with its equal and opposite everything. So that's the first thing that jumped out there. Maybe we'll just go into the laws of love and the laws of light and the laws of perfection just briefly, and then I'll begin and then you can jump in. So on the table, when we're doing point holding, on the table, what we call the laws of love are what I call the three powers. So we're actually we're finding what is right to release, and we're applying the three powers as the energy of transmutation to release anything less than love. So that is forgiveness, gratitude, and love. Those are the three transmutational powers within the emotional body. And that's I'll just make it like super brief, and then you can expand on it. So then when we get into the mental body, that changes. Doug Morrison used to say in his lectures, the rules of the games change once we get through that level. When we get to the level of pain, we transmute something within that level, and then we get to see that duality, that place in the mental body from where we are creating. And there the laws change to the laws of light. And it's very sequential in its progression, simply because we can't access the laws of light, and we can't access that inner light until a certain amount of emotional energy has been released, a certain amount of emotional resistance has been released, and then it naturally comes. When we get through a transmutation in pain, I remember when it first started happening, and before that, I had lots of experience in visualization techniques and all kinds of, seeing the light and all of that. But this was totally different than that. This was where that essence of light that is within us became known, so that then with that awareness, then I was able to apply it. So that's applying then the laws of light, and it came in many ways. It came in depending on the duality that I was working with. It came in its perfection. And that's how I saw it. It came in its perfection. Whatever was required for that particular duality, that's how the light presented itself. So sometimes it was like a blowtorch, and it was very thin and moved, in a very directive way. Sometimes it was bigger than that. Sometimes it was very like light lavender. Sometimes it was bright ultraviolet. I mean, that it had variables within it, depending on what I was working with at the time. So do you want to jump in there? Yeah.
Oh, sure. For those watching that have never heard of the I am activity, the laws of love and light are talked about quite a bit. And I remember John Ray, when I was in Maui, I'd been on the table, and I had this word pattern come up, and I was saying to myself, and I felt very embarrassed just to even say the word pattern because of my religious beliefs. But the word pattern was, "I am that I am." Like it was just like that's all I wanted to say. I am that I am. And
Was that prior to you knowing about the I am teachings?
yeah, it was like
Yeah.
after that point honey session, I raised my hand. And I said, "Hey, John, you know, I thought Jesus was the only one that could say that." And I think that's probably a really common feeling most people have, is they don't understand the power of that word. Whenever we use the word "I am," whatever follows it, uh, we are using what is considered in the I am activities the name of God to, so we are the creator. When we say "I am tired," or "I am hungry," or "I am great," or "I'm happy," "I'm love," "I'm whatever," or whatever follows that, me feeling, whether it's "I am" or "I" or whatever, is like we are 24/7 creating. But just that one, that simple understanding. And when he told me that, then I went ahead and bought the books from the I am activity and read through them voraciously after I got back to Arizona where I was practicing.
The green books?
Yeah, and I was a chiropractor in Tempe, and when I didn't have a patient, I'd pull the books out and I'd start reading through the books because it was such a different perception of what Jesus meant when he used those two words. And I think a lot of people listening will have come through a Christian background, not necessarily everybody, because Christianity is actually a small percentage of all the different religions. But there's one thing that's come to me about religion. My 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 path has led me to prenatal memory. And so it seems like everything in the inner world of our 9 months is reflected in the outer. And what's actually being reflected is because it's such a massive experience to build our bodies. And when we talk about astrology and how when the cord is cut in the position of all the cosmos at that time, imprints on us. But it does, and even re-embodiment or past lives. It doesn't talk about this, the effect on our day to day of this gestational period and what's called epigenetics, or the environment in which we all grow up in. So anyway, religion. There's no nice way to put this, but let's say all of the huge outward manifestations that so many people put their power into, whether it's religious based or scientific based, if you look at from the point of duality and the right and left brain, and then you take it down even to the point of what we as a fetus experienced in the womb, and realize that we've forgotten everything from conception age 3 or 4. Let's just take religion and look at it. Every country has created some form of a being outside of themselves that they worship. Not everybody. There's atheists and all that, but they maybe worship their car, or their cows. But when we're inside the womb, and it's an enclosed space, it's a dark space. And I look at parents as the God of the womb. In other words, when we're in there, we know they're there, but we can't see them. And that's such a powerful imprint that we had to create a religious reflection of these unconscious memories. If you get my drift, that's what I'm saying, is that we have created what we've forgotten. Everything that we give our power to, you can take that into the scientific arena, and the duality between science and religion, as far as where we come from and what the meaning of life is. That's where it has its conflict. But in the I amness, or in the centered or the balanced place where we don't we can see both sides of the duality that Illia was talking about. When you reach the mental level and you get through the lower emotions, we start to experience on the mental level, and that's when regeneration happens. I think one of the most famous quotes John Ray had when he was asking to understand these principles was, "Until man can experience on the mental level that which exists on the physical, he will be bound to the physical."
I did a short talk on that this weekend. I posted it just recently. Yeah.
Cool.
On
Yeah.
that quote alone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the cornerstone principle that was, when he was asking for understanding, that was the words that came to him. And for those of you who haven't read the book, it's quite a fun story as he goes through talking about when he decided to fast for 10 days and find out why the point holding worked on his basketball athletes. When they sprain an ankle, they hold points and they get better. And he wanted an understanding of the universal principles he was dealing with. And that was basically the answer that he got. But I remember he said, when he first got that answer, he said, "Oh, that's too simple." And the light started to leave the room. He says, "Oh, no, wait, come back. I'll do it." Here I spent 10 days and I get an answer. I don't like the answer. But just to know that he was a work in progress, just like we all are. Right. And we stand on the shoulder of giants. If you would look at some of the testimonials of some of the people that have applied these principles and the physical benefits that they get, and mental and emotional too. I guess because I had a daughter with cerebral palsy, that's what attracted my attention. Because as a young chiropractor, my firstborn child having a handicap, I wanted to find a way to heal her. And that's what actually got me into body electronics. That was the motivation that got me to go into it. I was more interested in helping my daughter. And John Ray used to say that if the people that you're with, mainly my wife and my family, that have basically abandoned my journey of being true to myself, if they don't apply these principles themselves, you'll part ways. And I suppose that's what I've experienced. Although on some level, I still see from the morphogenetic resonance application, I still feel like I'm helping my gene pool evolve, but it just happens because of morphogenetic resonance. Right. Anyway, just
even that
thought.
That morphogenetic resonance, and we touched on that last week's discussion about but I don't think we said like the seven generations past and 7 generations forward. That's kind of a I think an accepted viewpoint in many traditions, that what we do, if we're truly healing something within ourselves, within our own consciousness, that is rippling backward and forward. And I really looked at that very deeply over the years, and even that knowing that we perhaps are our own ancestors. We're even reliving that DNA cyclical process. And it's really interesting when you look at that very deeply, and in the reincarnation process. What I'm really interested in at the moment is how to get to the place in consciousness, truly authentically, that we can lift consciousness outside of the reincarnation model. I haven't read the book yet, but I've listened to David Icke in the last few months talk about his book, and I'm going to listen to it. He has it on Kindle, and he calls it The Trap, and that's the basic premise is that at a certain point we have to move our awareness outside of that reincarnation cycle and to really move forward. And it's something that I've been interested in for many years, prior to David writing that book. Just looking at the flower of life structure, I worked with Drunvalo Melchizedek for many years, traveled and was a student of his for a decade. So, and ended up going into his advanced teachings and then becoming a teacher of his work, which it's another entire story. But learning about the flower of life, that structure that we call the flower of life, that three-dimensional structure, not that two-dimensional format that we see sometimes portrayed, but to really understand the flower of life and that the 19 spheres inside of a sphere, and then the externalized sphere outside of that, and that being the template for consciousness, in that reincarnation cycle. So the 5 platonic solids, for instance, is those building blocks that we have within this third dimensional realm. But what we're doing in body electronics, and this is something I think is very at the core of body electronics, is that we're getting to the place eventually, with a lot of effort and a lot of application of those 3 laws, love, light, and perfection, we start to see glimpses, and we start to see how we can pierce that veil of that trap, of that that structure that was created, that we're sort of downloading our consciousness into this in this dimension, in this realm. So to not to be too convoluted about it, but I really do feel that one thing that came this morning is that once we get to a certain point, we start to see very clearly how what we've done. So we're coming up through the physical and the emotional and into the mental, and then the spiritual. We see things sort of collapsing behind us as we're bringing things into perfection, as we're bringing things into harmony within our own consciousness, which takes a tremendous amount of effort. We start to see that collapsing of that platform that we're putting our consciousness onto, and even to the point. Eventually, we will get to the point where the holistic construct will collapse. That's how I see it, and that we will be prepared at that point for a true spiritual experience, as the physical comes into a perfection, and the emotional body comes into a perfection. The mental body comes into a perfection, where we have transmuted the attachments and the resistances we have to either side of the dualistic format. Yeah. So.
Yeah, thank you. Beautiful. I love Drunvalo Melchizedek and his work. I didn't get the opportunity like you did to travel with him, but when I latched onto his books, I was trucking. Driving a truck across the country, so that would be what I'd look forward to, is reading more in his 2 books. I spent 2 years as a missionary in Taiwan, and multiple times I saw the lions that guard the temples, and one underneath the hand of one lion is the three-dimensional flower of life. Now the other is the baby of that particular lion form. So even the ancient Chinese, they had that respect for the flower of life. I recently have been reading the work of a guy, last name Baird, and he studied embryology, and he used the fish pattern. He was able to study embryogenesis.
Mm.
And it's the same as in a human in the early stages. And the there's a Chinese book called the Bagua. You may have heard of the Bagua. It's based on 8-sided geometrical shape, 8-sided. But anyway,
Like an octahedron, you mean, or?
octahedron, yeah.
Okay.
And but it's like it has lines inside, so it looks like a maze, like a mouse maze, and each one is different, is related to a different part of the each side has a character and an almost, let's just call it a meridian associated with it. I think that's as good as because I think there was an 8. I was looking at the chart the other day. There's like 12 on the Touch for Health meridians, but they have a diagram to where like with yoga, where 2 hours of each day is dedicated to each meridian, to where it flows around. But with my belly button pulsing like it has for 20 years, 30, 30 years, whatever it is, 1994, so 28 years. I've been really curious about what the navel means, but there's actually a Chinese acupuncture technique now that's being touted as very powerful, where they stick the needles in 8 points around the navel, kind of slanted in towards on the edge of the navel, not in the middle. But in going back to Baird's work of the embryogenesis and trying to make understanding of how the meridians in the body work, and I love how you have the meridian chart behind you today, but because the Chinese have had a big influence. I was a missionary in Taiwan, but they had more influence on me than I ever had on them. But the thing that's curious about the embryogenesis is in the zygote, it's not what they teach in schools today. Even the current medical, these early stages of embryogenesis are not taught correctly, in that the 8 cells, they're called trophoblasts. They're invasive, and they're the ones that dig into the decidua of the uterine wall for implantation. And they're actually cancerous, but they know when to turn off. When they get big enough, then they turn off. But this whole work is based on that cancer is a reflection of something in embryogenesis gone wrong, because the cancer cells act like these trophoblastic cells do when they invade the uterine wall. It's very interesting work. But anyway, the thing that I found really it kind of just came to me, that this is why my pulsing of the navel and the acupuncture technique based on the Bagua, or the 8 needles, is that these first 8 cells, they're all the same. They look the same, and one of them chooses what is chosen. Whatever, I don't know how it's chosen, but only one of them drops down the little stalk and then starts to form the embryo. The other 8 are all trophoblastic. They're all invasive. They're all going in and creating this gradually increasing blood supply for the fetus. So the idea that the navel, the Chinese have this saying, never directly needle the navel, but there's this technique where they're needling, the 8 points around the navel and even around the whole belly. It made sense that, okay, so you have 8 cells, and so maybe each one of, somehow it's those cells are what become a different meridian. So all the meridians actually do flow through the navel at some point to the cord and placenta. And so when we have that cut off at birth, I mean, that's what creates this level of unconsciousness that doesn't really just get discussed in past lives or whatever. But there's a lot of research on epigenetics. I'm not going to say they're not looking at it, but I believe that this explanation of embryogenesis is different, from what I understand, is different than actually what's taught in medical schools today, where it's more of half of it becomes, they don't really have the specific details of the numbers. When you get into the numbers, like the sacred geometry, where you have an 8-sided thing called Ba in Chinese stands for 8. So Bagua is what, so it's an 8-sided symbol. Yeah, so it's that's getting back into, and the flower of life is basically the Fibonacci numbers. It's very beautiful how everything spins off, but our physical body is actually according to Drunvalo's work, is the pattern upon which all creation is based. This is the grand creation.
In this holistic realm. Yeah. And there's a really interesting, I wanted to say there, to the books that you're referring to, is the Drunvalo Melchizedek's books, The Ancient Secrets, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, and they're volume 1 and 2. So people can get visuals of what Jeffory was just discussing there, around the like how things divide, and then that natural progression of the Platonic solids. The word perfection keeps popping in. So the first thing I want to say about that is, I've been doing the holistic fast. I've been posting that on Facebook and then sort of randomly on Twitter. And today is day number 24. And it has a, I'm doing editing of it as I, days prior to posting it. And it had, today's post has a link to a PDF of the body electronics experience, which was the short book that I wrote many years ago. And and self-published. So that's why I can gift it free of charge on my website and on my my post. And in that, I was curious about, because there was many different edits of it over the years. So I was curious which one it was, and I was scrolling down through the PDF, and the 10 steps to perfection are in that booklet. So I really encourage everybody, if they're interested, just go to Holistic Fast Day 24, and they can find a free PDF that they can download and print, do whatever they like with it. And they can see those 10 steps to perfection that John Whitman Ray wrote there.
Yeah.
I think that's a good, I think it's a good place to begin that talk about perfection, because I remember when I first started, I had resistance to that word when I first started practicing body electronics, and it was like I was seeing it more about this physical, like feeling that it's kind of like this goal-oriented perfectionism. And it took me a while to figure out that that's not what it's about at all. And it's really about the divine blueprint that's within each and every one of us. And it's just working our way back to that perfection through the principles of love and light. So it's releasing physically, emotionally, and mentally the resistances that keep us from the natural perfection that we already are.
Yeah. The word perfection has been a curious one for me to come to an understanding of, and I certainly have a different perception of it now than when I was growing up. But one thing that had helped the penny drop as far as the understanding of perfection as it relates to body electronics was the list, and how we implement the list. And perfection is nothing more or less than seeing the end from the beginning before we do it. So let's say I want to, touch my phone. Okay, I think the thought, I do it, and I sit back and I say, it is good, and that was, it's like, it is good. It's what God said when He, after each of the days of creation, and God saw that it is good. And so that's the simplicity of us doing very perfect things, even if they're super simple. And I remember one of John's statements, and I'll see if I can and put it out there, about simplicity as far as it relates to the list and perfection, is to search for things beyond our grasp is fantasy, when that which lies uncompleted we see, yet holds the key to that through which right action ours will be. The simplest things in life will set us free. So the list, I don't know, did I quote it right? Does that sound about right to you?
100%.
Okay, that was etched in my memory pretty good. But I always go back to that one as a validating principle for why I am the way I am. A man of principle, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. But holding fast, sometimes it's like, whoa, horsey, what I latch onto here.
I guess that's where the faith comes in. There is, and I've had a lot of resistance around the word faith as well, because there's so many connotations and things to work through with that. And do you want to say what John said about faith, about the seen and the unseen? That quote that he.
I'll let you do that, because I've already done a couple of his quotes.
Yeah. Well, I was putting it off to you because you were remembering the quote so well. Let me.
I don't remember that one as well.
Well,
that's for sure.
It's the one about like we have this belief, so that seeing is believing. So that's more of a scientific model. So seeing is believing. But in the interpretation of faith with body electronics, it is believing is seeing. So it's not a blind faith, in other words, or that, what I consider is the scientific model of having to prove something in order for it to be valid, in other words. So there's layers to that, of course, as there's layers to everything we discover as we're moving up the emotional scale. When we get to a certain point where that faith is actually a knowing, an inner knowing. And it moves from, I see very clearly from the level of grief where we see life happening to us, where the faith is often, the faith in sort of the unseen. And that can be very powerful too. It can be very powerful in that, to get us through that bridge from what we consider the lower emotions beneath the heart. So that would be unconsciousness, apathy, and grief. In the higher emotions, with fear, anger, pain, and enthusiasm, when we get up there, we have a complete shift of awareness, where our consciousness, life isn't happening to us. Our consciousness has a realization within fear that, and that really gets turned, and we really discover how, the mastery is from the inside out, and that again, that happens in very incrementally, but then we go from that sort faith, that what we could consider maybe a not a blind faith, but a faith where we have to have that feeling that even though we're not aware of it at the moment, we know that there's something that that perfection, we know that it exists. We have that somewhat of a knowing, and then we start to come into it more and more and more, into a full realization. When that happens, then that seeing is believing definition of faith is believing is seeing. We truly open up our sight, our inner sight, and our inner knowing, as we release resistance from the higher emotions, and then that faith. So that, you see, it's just a simple just a simple explanation about how faith, that word faith, really unfolds as we move our consciousness into a less resistant levels of awareness.
Yeah, faith. Faith does have a lot of different definitions given to it as people go along, and it according to a man's faith, so be it unto him, or that kind of is the same as believing is seeing.
Right.
So faith, hope, charity, yeah. These words are good words. There's something, we talk about the only creative power in our world is what we think, feel, and say in a moment, 24/7. Like, we are literally generating our reality with our word and with our thoughts and our emotions. And when I tapped into the prenatal memory, it went to mostly emotions, and because we didn't have words, we didn't have language, at least that we were, speaking and using, that I'm aware of during gestation. But that's why a lot of the word patterns that come up are so simple. They're so childlike in the beginning phases, I think, is because but I've heard it said that our emotions are like 80% of the energy, and then the thought and the word are like, meshed in there with the emotion. But if you don't have, the more you speak with your whole being, with your whole body, the more it resonates out into the same energy field that whoever's listening to this podcast is. So I suppose it can have influences at levels. Well, that's what I've always been told, is that 80% of what people perceive, the words coming out of your mouth, they're picking up on your body language, or the vibe that you're putting out, more than the actual words or the thoughts. And so these young children that are born, they're so spontaneous, and they have all these emotions, and so as parents, we want to control those down the way they were controlled by our parents. And so the suppression of the emotional body, that's where we start when we start holding points, is what we've inherited as a result of, children are not here to teach us. We're here to teach them how to be, grown-ups, right? They always grow up. When are you going to grow up, Jeff? I get that a lot.
What's your answer to that?
Uh, I I usually say, well, a child shall lead them, or when Jesus said, "Suffer the little children to come unto me," I always say, well, because of the prenatal memory thing, I say, well, how little? It's like the like lately what's been coming out of me is this just the suck push, the hiccup and the sneeze of the or that we experience outwardly, and the COVID and as a cold, the sneeze and the hiccup not so much, but the sneeze is considered like a cold flu-like symptom. But when we were in the womb, we had complete control over the simultaneous two-way flow along the umbilical cord, and we controlled it with our suck push mechanism. And I I've come to this place where how you have the yin and the yang. You say that one is suck and one is push, and the thin red line in between, and it's like that. I don't know if okay, anybody's done a lot of colonics or whatever, or maybe somebody has problems with gas, digestion issues or gas. Or, it's like as I've been working with this prenatal memory, a lot of times what releases through me is compressed gas. It's literally like compressed CO2 from a suffocation memory coming up and out. And the way I'll milk it out is with this suck push mechanism. And it's like I'll just follow the pain. And it it's really hard to explain, but it's like the hour manifestation will be like, when I'm really going through a good healing crisis that was, from prenatal memory, there'll be gas releasing in the colon. And and it's like if I have itchiness coming out my ankles, and I'll just intensify the itchiness, and it'll come up to where I was, gilling it up here, the suck push. And it's like my whole body will become the same itch. And I've been looking at fungus and parasites, and their connection to consciousness, based on what I learned from Simon Yu. It's like uh, we coexist with them, but as we come upscale, I think that it's something so serious. It's like the suck push thing is like a little compressor, but it was in the control mechanism. We were doing both at the same time because the flow was happening in two directions at the same time. And so it's like this, like I think you described it like a very silky fine line between life and death. It's like life death crystal last week. I don't know. Just I've had experiences where I'm doing some colonic work, and I'll have like just lots of gas come out, or it's like, or anyway, yeah. So it's the hiccup and the sneeze is like that's the mechanism, and all the muscles involved with that. If people just feel into it, they'll get a feel for, it worked together. And I think I may have done this before, but I'll do it just for shits and giggles, because it's so funny and so in our face, because all the facial wrinkle lines of the hiccup basically looks like this, and the sneeze is a big smile, and it's like pushing. So the hiccup and the sneeze, the hiccup is a suck and the smile is a push at the belly button, but we're doing them both at the same time. And if you think about life, that's kind of how it works. People are either sucking up to you to see what they can get out of you, or they're pushing you away, because that's how we survive in the womb. So we're all in the suck push
those are some patterns. Those are some patterns that can come from that, with like resistance patterns that can come from that. The piece that I get from that, Jeff, is for people who are either practicing the body electronics principles or are preparing to practice, is the let it happen, make it happen principle, which is really important to the transmutational process. That that place that we get in consciousness where we are making it happen. So we're applying a principle we're applying, we don't wait until the inner essence, like let's say we have a really good chunk of pain and we've really accessed that, whether it's physical or emotional, but we've really accessed some pain. And we get to this place where, like I remember this person pops into my mind. It was at one of my intensives in near Sedona, and she had been at my events before, my intensives before, and she was very well educated in the body electronics process. Yet when she got to this level of pain, she she was really, really willing to expand it within her body. So then she got to this place where she had a full body pain, like her whole body. She was racked with pain. And, there were two people holding points on her. And I remember the one point holder was very inexperienced. This was her first experience in body electronics intensive. And she was, clearly very concerned and really didn't know where to go. With it. So I was guiding them, as that's kind of the importance of having a body electronics instructor present.
Yeah.
And or at least somebody who's in a point holding group who's floating. There's always someone who can float in the room to the different point holders. And this woman got locked into her pain, and she had really been willing to expand it. So that's the make it happen. That's really, making it expanded, making it more. And then, but she totally blanked out on how to transmute, like the three powers. And, so it took a little bit of coaxing before she realized that it was, she had to access the, one or more of the three powers. And she was probably in full body pain for a couple of hours. And it was, it was a tremendous experience for her. And it was a tremendous experience for the point holders. I've seen this happen more than one time, by the way. It's happened many, many times. But eventually they get to the place with the pain takes them to that place. It's a great motivator. It takes them to that place where they're, with some good facilitation, that they access then, that inner essence, whether it's forgiveness, gratitude, or love. And then they have some, a transmutational experience where I've seen from, if they've had pain. Another woman I remember, she had racking pain in her spine for a couple of hours. Like literally she was in agony on her spine. And she had the memory, she had the word pattern, she had all three creative aspects to uncreate. And she just held that resistance. There was we're unconsciously holding the resistance, continuously, and she had brought it into her conscious awareness, and then she held it in that conscious awareness for a period of time, then got to one of the three. I think she got to some really powerful love, and then it was almost instantaneous, where it went from racking pain to completely gone.
Yes, that's the kind of experiences that lets the person know that we're not kidding around here. If you're gonna open up Pandora's box, be ready to love it.
That's right. And that's where you get the consciousness change, and that's where you get the physical regeneration. That's where you get the upward movement in the ascensional process. And it's
right. Yeah. It's speaking of the ascensional process. You want to mention the violet consuming flame, and it's as far as what
Well, let's talk
things you
first
may have
about you
taught
mentioned the
about.
green books earlier. So let's talk first about that. So those are the I am teachings that come out of Mount Shasta. I don't know if we were in contact, Jeffrey, through my Mount Shasta years, but I was very attracted to Mount Shasta for a number of years and spent a lot of time there. And years ago, like 20 years ago, the first four books, and 30, 40, 50 years ago, the first four books of the I Am Teaching, the green books that we speak of, were prerequisite readings for body electronics events. And,
Right.
John, that was part of, I think there was like, I don't know how many books there were, but there were a lot of books that was prerequisite reading. It's not now for mine, but I leave that up to people's attraction, whether they're attracted to that, to the I Am teachings. But they give you a lot of information about the violet flame, which then ties into what I spoke of earlier with the mental body. When we access the mental body, we also access the violet fire, the violet flame, that is that transmuting light that I spoke of earlier in this discussion. And we direct that. So that also goes with the make it happen. So we direct it, and we get to this place where we can make it happen. So we're making it happen when we're in the emotional body in that transmutational stages where we're accessing love, and there's that perfect amount of love to transmute whatever we're working with, and we always have that accessible. That's always accessible. There's not a time that we would get into pain where we didn't have the access to that transmuting power of love that transmutes that pain. In fact, that transmuting power is right there with that pain. It's all about our willingness to apply it. So that making it happen. So that making it happen and then that letting it happen comes together. It's like this perfect it's like a duality, but it's very beautiful when it happens, when we bring it together simultaneously. And that, we get more with experience, we get a lot more awareness of what that actually is. So yeah, so the violet flame, the violet fire, it can, like I said earlier, it can present itself very very differently for different levels of resistance within different dualities. And yeah.
Yeah, the thing I remember from one of my point home experience, one of my first really intensive pain patterns that came up was in my left elbow, and I wasn't even having points held on my left elbow. And it got to the point that I decided to move my body and break up the pain pattern. So I just want to make people aware that you can always move your body, and it's going to break up this pain pattern that you've brought up diligently, and you'll get another chance some other time.
Right.
But like when this pain comes up for you to observe, love, and release, I've experienced that many times with as I've attempted to hold points on people as they like myself, and sometimes it's as simple as my nose itches and they have to scratch their nose. I said, well, just and every time they do it, I'll say, oh, well, rather than move your body and scratch your nose, focus your attention on the itch and intensify it. And if you want to, send it to every cell of your body with love and bring in this, in the stillness, poof, this itchiness. And
it's the power of
once you've mastered that and done that a few times, you realize, whoa, I don't have to, like John used to say, okay, as far as getting adjusted by a chiropractor, which I am, versus having your points held, I think he used to say people will go to a chiropractor when they're hurting and get adjusted and break up the pain pattern, which is movement, right? And realignment and balancing. He said, well, another way of looking at it was to go and have your points held wherever the pain is, go through the consciousness that you created it from and love it and release it that way, and then go get an adjustment.
Right.
But it's another, once people realize they have the power, that's like game over for so many healing professions that rely on some type of massage or movement or whatever they're doing that's not coming from within the heart's light of the individual and their own power.
That's the power of the stillness. And that's also, that's a great point, Jeffory, because the those examples that I gave with those people that were on the table and they get to the level of pain and then it was intensified, they were holding that pain, making it happen by remaining perfectly still. They could have shifted it at any time, but they were literally willing to experience that by remaining perfectly still. So that's a great point to bring up. That's the power of the stillness. What did Jesus say? Or I like to refer to that being as Yeshua, but be still and know. How is that translated in the Bible, Jeffory?
Well, I say it in a little bit different cadence now with my understanding of the I am, being the creator. Like, in order to know the I am, be still and know that guy, the I am, which
Right.
is still you, which is the same light that's in you. But you have to be perfectly still, because this heart's light, according to the I'm activity, it's like an eighth of an inch tall flame that comes in from the higher self and is anchored in the heart, and it's what heats our whole body. So whether it's fear and below, which is cold, or fear and above, which is heat coming out of the body, it's all coming from this one heart's light. I was looking at the threefold flame of the yellow, pink, and blue.
Yeah.
For the male, masculine, feminine, with the yellow in the middle, as far as the sacred heart's light.
I was just thinking about that when you said it.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, we're two peas in a pod. In many ways. You've had many times.
Yeah.
I haven't had, but it's fun to discuss these principles with you, Illia. Yeah.
Yes, I really appreciate it too, and I think it's really important. It's important for us to share. We're like the elders of body electronics now, so I think it's really, really, really important for us to share like this, on a regular basis. And I feel that really is a good completion point here for today, with that threefold flame. And I really, if anybody wants to look at that further, really look at those I am teachings. I felt I got a lot of heart opening through those teachings, and especially by going to Mount Shasta. And I really, really miss Mount Shasta. And the U.S. Needs to open up their borders to the people who will not succumb to the injections that are being, I don't even know how to say it, but they're being propagandized around the world to right now. So I think the U.S. it would be really great if the U.S. would.
Can I say something that might be helpful here as far as the injection goes, based on prenatal memory that's come to me? Is that our umbilical cord was our first syringe, and it's just like anything else that we put all of our energy into. We can like at birth, uh, our umbilical cord is cut off, and at conception we have one egg. So the medical profession is based on the unconscious memories of conception and birth. The first surgery, drugs and surgery, that's the two things. But then the method of administration of these vaccines is based on the unconscious trust we all had of our own umbilical cord, because that's what it was. It was a suck and a push. That's the same thing they came up with. That's why it's so unconsciously trusted, and they
Right.
have to beat their injection. So if we could put a spin and interpret what that injection that syringe represents based on prenatal memory, I mean, it's game over once this actually comes to a conscious awareness within our memories. So I've wanted to say that publicly and put it out there, but it's such a bizarre concept. But if you look at, we are the creators, and the whole medical, big pharma, all that stuff, we are supporting it by our unconsciousness. So consciousness changes is the only way. But that's just like a very direct assault on the syringe and what it represents in the unconscious mind
Right.
from
I
what has
think
been coming
that's
out of
a
me.
that's a perfect analogy for why people were so unconsciously receptive to it. And I want to say that Mount Shasta, just to finish today's discussion, I took it to Mount Shasta. I took those teachings to the mountain, and I really suggest everybody do that. I hope to be able to do that in the near future again, just to sit on that mountain. I would go there, time after time, year after year, and just go to Panther Meadows. And I remember just sleeping on the ground. I never took a tent or anything when I was on Mount Shasta. I took a sleeping bag and a pillow, and I just laid on the ground, because it does get cold at night. It's up the upper parking lot, which is as high as you can drive, is 7,777 feet. And you can go a little bit higher. You can hike up higher than that if you want to, but that's basically at the end of the tree line. And yeah, so just taking that energetic, I do feel in my own experiences that there are places where geological formations and places where there's energy has been built upon, where it's really, really helpful for our experiences. And that helps for the inner experience. It helps. I know it really helped me in my to continue in the inner experiences, to have those outer experiences as well. So yeah.
I would like to go visit Mount Shasta someday. I've done a lot of imagination, reading the books, but I've never been there.
Do it, Jeffory. It's just magnificent. Castle Lake. It's literally, like, I would say, probably Mount Shasta in my experience on Earth would be if I could go to one place, that would be where it is. And Castle Lake is right there, near there, and a little hike up from Castle Lake is called Heart Lake, and it's really magnificent. The energy there is spectacular, so I highly recommend that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I for whatever reason, the creator has me hunkered down here in the heartland. I keep asking, where do you want me?
Well, you can always go to Mount Shasta on a temporarily, just as for your own little
right. And I'm working actually on creating the ability to travel by having some people do my daily chores of feeding my ducks and my dogs. But I love my ducks and my dogs, and I put so much love into creating this these birds, I swear to you, they're like angels. They're holding a power and a consciousness that I've learned so much from that. And I don't know if you've ever heard of people having what they call their ethereal wings unfold, to where other people actually see the wings unfold. Uh, uh, One of my modalities is tuning forks, and the teacher is Eileen Day McCusick, and she talks about in the advanced module the high heart. When she does the tuning forks for the high heart, she's actually witnessed angels in the room while she's tuning that part of the body, and the unfolding of what she calls the ethereal wings. And I noticed on the picture of Saint Germain I have on my wall, he's got a set of wings, like, up above his head. That's his. So I'm wondering, if actually my inspiration to create this block of ducks is holding a balance of power for good, and so that's why it's very I have one guy down the street. He has chickens, raises fighting cocks. Very, not a very nice thing, and then another guy around the corner. He's got a bunch of Canadian geese that have decided they're just going to winter there all year long, have their babies, and they've been safe enough that now he's got a flock of geese even in the winter there at his pond. But
back to the wings, I feel like in my experience, the light that starts to come out from either side of the spine, especially, it's kind of historical that wings come from the back and they flow out. In my experience, it's like when we get to the place where we have released enough resistance, especially in the higher emotional centers, the light starts to be able to be released out into our auric field. And I see that, I've seen that in myself, and I've seen that in many, many others. And of course that light is carried. Yeah, that light is carried then into, other dimensional realms, and those beings that can be visitors, those the benevolent beings that can be like helpers. It's their light. That's how I've seen it, is that it's like this light. And for me, it's never even looked like wings. It just looks like it's like manifestations of light, and they're very and they move, and it's very very fluid. But anyway, let's
if you go to the I Am Sanctuary website and look at the images of the different ascended masters they have pictures of and cosmic beings, there's one that I've resonated with. He's called the Beloved Cosmic Angel. I don't know if you remember the picture of the put out, but you can look that up, the Beloved Cosmic Angel. But he's actually got pink ethereal wings behind him in the photo. They look like feathers.
Beautiful.
And pink on both sides. I've got a flag in one hand and a flag in the left hand, and a flaming blue sword in his right hand.
The swords for the transmutation of resistance.
Yeah, but it's blue, but the wings on both sides they're a very light shade of pink.
Beautiful.
It's a very curious depiction of this being. But anyway, yeah.
Well, thank you, Jeffrey. Well, thank you for another. That was another great discussion, and I'll look forward to next Tuesday.
All right, it's good to spend time with you, Illia. Thank you.
Likewise. Have a great week. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. We'll talk next Tuesday again.
Awesome. That'd be lovely. Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you then.